Hey everybody, how are you? Yep, I'm going to do a Brexit update for you. More just to, I suppose, post-mortemize recent developments. I had my cackle in Vegas in the dry weather, and it was mainly because it's such a patent and obvious scam that it's laughable and was predictable. And I have I suppose I have an underlying meme to this, but let's just deal with the details. Here's a little fact sheet for you. 17.4 million people voted leave in one of the highest, most participated general elections, referendums, which was far more well participated in than any previous general election and almost any other referendum entirely. So there's been no referendum largely in the modern era that has engaged so many people. So rather than being insignificant, it's kind of like a trade where there's high volume at that particular price. There is high participation level. It's not just floating in air. The people have engaged. 17.4 million voted leave, 16.1 remain. 17.4 leave, 16.1 remain. By constituency, 406 leave constituencies. So that breakup voter map that you see that has the better part of 648 constituencies, 406 of them were leave, was the dominant number. 242 remain. Yeah. So 406 does 242 by constituency. If you do it by Labour areas and Conservative areas, in the Labour areas, which is typically deemed the working class blue collar hero, 148 leave, 84 remain. So let's just get that straight. 148, 84 remain. Constituency in Labour Party. Conservative, 247 leave, 80 remain. Even bigger swing in the Conservative area. So 247 people wanted the Britain to be out of the EU bureaucratic construct. By region, so we take 12 regions, 9 of 12. That's called 75%, folks. 9 of 12 leave, 3 remain. By MP in Parliament, here's the kicker and the shocker. By MP in Parliament, 160 MPs leave, 486, almost 500 remain. Let's say that again. So not much over 150 does 500 in remain. Just over 150 leave, 160, and just under 500 remain. And then you see these memes with these people with their EU flag standing out. Brexit, not going great, is it? As if it's the voters that voted incorrectly and are to blame, when you have the representatives in Parliament that, to a T, largely want to spoil the Brexit event. And what do you then get? You get a spoiled Brexit event. Brexit was not the problem. It's the MPs that are supposed to be implementing the will of the people. Now, I kind of know this, but I'm talking to a lot of people that are coming across this for the first time. The people in power and the people that supposedly represent you don't actually represent you. They represent the people that give them the power and help them make money out of being in the political realm, and pay them to be there and back there running. You voting is kind of like a second proxy to make you feel that you're an absolute contributor to the government and that you have buy-in from the everyday peasants and savages. The truth is those guys rarely work for you. They work for themselves and the people that gave them the power to be there. There's 2 Freemasonic lodges in Westminster. There's fancy Opus Dei little cliques. There are people that fancy the idea of an MEP job in Europe one day if they keep Britain in, so that they can also pull $250,000 a year, show up 5 times out of a month, throw in huge expenses, and the guy who rats them out for their expenses gets thrown out and they never get brought to charge, can put train stations, train fares while they're flying in planes as well. All the usual absolute mayhem. This is an audit. This is an audit nightmare, the EU. Then you have the likes of Draghi, who has admitted that all the risks are to the downside and didn't even get to the point where they even did a tightening cycle. At least you could say the Americans did a minor one, a little U-turn. We didn't even see that out of the EU. Destined to fail. Since the EU has been in existence, growth has flattened out in the European nations, and Britain has exceeded it. People are coming from the EU to find work in Britain from the EU because their new super bureaucracy has destroyed jobs. The southern Mediterranean states are devastated and told to shut up and leave and keep quiet. Italy, Greece, Spain, their youth unemployment is unbelievable. They're all baristas and schmuckbucks in London and serving tables. Why? Because the absolute economic rout that is the Goldman Sachs Draghi cartel and the central banking cartel entirely, and the likes of Greece that were bounced in there that never met the Maastricht criteria, that had, again, Goldman Sachs do off-balance sheets options to hide their full extent of their debt, so that they were immediately in trouble. And everyone got a nice little ramp, a feel-good ramp, got to borrow at Germans' rates until they were so over-indebted, and then reality bit. Same went for the Irish, and I'll talk about the Irish. Love the Irish, great nation, terribly treated by the imperialist British nation. And I can say, you know, they changed master. Unfortunately, they got the pump with the European low rates and being deemed as good as Germany because, you know, a EU bond can't be deemed to fail. Their banks are now completely insolvent and propped up, and they had to change or got given a second chance on how to vote when they voted incorrectly, and they've swapped master. Hey, I might swap master if previously I had a long breeding resentment like they may well have with the monarchy and the government of England for potato famine and all the other tragedies. But the truth is, in time, they will come to feel the pain and the wrath of the EU. Now they're a useful stick to beat the English with, and they may well be enjoying the moment, and I wouldn't hold it against them, but a great warning should go out to the Irish people about the situation. It all goes around, comes around. Be careful out there, my friends. This bureaucracy is vile and dangerous, and it's here to bring you down, and your MPs want to sustain it because they are backed by a cartel of bankers and all the other conglomeratization, the tax harmonization, the EU army, which is great for the military industrial complex, of course, etc., etc. All the big plans rely on this supernatural overarching that transcends national governments political class. And it's an absolute sham and disgusting. And Brexit was supposed to take Britain out of it. And these people, these 486, particularly where there will be in constituencies that were leave, those heads want to be on sticks. And you have to take your opportunity. And I want to point out that Labour sold out as much as the Conservatives have done the Trojan Remain Theresa May attempt at a deal. The only Brexit was a no deal. So let's talk negotiation 101. Let's transcend this. You've seen the numbers. Let's transcend the numbers here. You know the story there. We'll come back to our friendly lizard traitor mate Tony Blair in a second, which I will show you a couple of things on him, the revolting vile lizard and Bilderberg attendee and dark state operative who's coining millions as a Middle East consultant, and now pimping out his services to Barnier and everyone else to undermine the best deal for Britain and to keep us in a soppy deal, along with the likes of Clegg and Major, the big soft cock. So anyway, those people, that point aside, negotiation 101. I read the book because I was buying wholesale from developers, toughened property men that built bought land, got big capital out of nasty banks, and built full-blown apartment blocks for buying wholesale. You needed to know how to negotiate with these guys. And one of the key points was the ability to say no deal. The ability to say no deal. No deal means I've made an offer, you've made an offer, we can't meet, we can walk away. You never are in a strong position if someone tells you you've got to sell your house, and even if you think it's worth £500,000 and you're being offered 250,000, I'm telling you it has to be sold, and you have to sell it to that guy, the only other guy in the room. You can't sell it to any other buyer. Not like the World Trade Organization and to the rest of the world go do business. You have to sell it, and you have to sell it on the cheap. You have to do a deal with this guy, and he's offering 250 and he ain't budging. And people in your family and team are saying, hey, he's under great credit pressure and the mortgage is 250. Don't pay him 500. Just get him off the hook. In other words, traitors in your own family are going to the buyer, say stand on 250. He's not allowed to sell to anyone but you, and there can be no deal. And before, where you contracted and the offer was valid for a certain amount of days, meant with the offer invalidating at the end of 30th of March, meaning after that period you were free from all of these constraints and could then go into the free market and sell your home to anybody at its market value of 500. They said, no deal is not an option. This is the only guy. And in fact, that time limit where you get reverted and set free from all these constraints and can go find your own deal and terms without taking this big hit is now going to be extended, moved forward, whatever the case may be. And I know the EU saying, oh, what's the point? What's this? These are these guys rubbing the Theresa May's face in it and saying, you need to give us more. It's a negotiation. They need that 39 billion like a hole in their head. Listen to Draghi. They are busted flush. They need the second biggest payer to give them a big payment. And now they've got you where you want to, thanks to the traitors like Blair, secretly advising the French president, contacting Barnier, doing all his traitorous, devilish work against the will of the British people, and helping the EU stand firm and act strong when in fact they're the weak guy in the room, and we are the strong guy as the primary buyer of their stuff. We are actually the strong guy. We buy more of their gear than they buy of ours. Simple economic fact. We are stronger, and they will be hurt more by us putting trade tariffs on BMW, Mercedes-Benz. Boom, 80%, 80%, 80%. Buy the cars assembled in Britain, Nissan in Sunderland. All these makers from the EU, from the German state, are killing their southern European neighbors. They're not allowing them to set them free. We can even pass a little bit of a de facto payment from those tariffs to Greece and Spain. We can divide and conquer. Hey, Spain. Hey, Greece. We're getting 80% on the tariff. You guys are suffering. We want to highlight the damage the EU is doing to you. Time for the game of divide and conquer. We're going to send you a subsidy out of these tariffs because you're battling from unemployment, etc., etc. We keep 60% of the 80% tariffs. We send 20% to the southern. We win PR points for caring for the young and the future generation that are being persecuted economically by this absolute Nazism. It's economic Nazism driven by the EU and its power grab and its extension. You get Hofstadt with his EU army and admitting the reason we're not winning and it's not so successful is we need more control. These guys are tying you into a federalized state where you will become nothing more than a province where they are a supernatural government and will reign by decree and harmonize taxation and all rules, and they will continue to sink the economy as they become big non-contributing to output entities of ever-growing lobbyist scale, gravy train scale that will laugh and look the other way, has no clear plan, bullies and throws out Yanis Varoufakis, who was a legitimate guy concerned for his people, and saying we need debt write-offs, and saying no you won't, we'll take long lease on all your assets, stripping Greece of its own land and assets because they were put into a deal they should never have been put into. This is the highway robbery of banker usury extraction through debt. and the Irish are set up for the same way and the same thing. If they don't continue to toe the line, how long do you think they're going to get away with their corporate tax rates? The EU quietly will have that on target. No more Amazon head office, no more Apple double Dutch with Ireland and Amsterdam. They will be coming for all those things. Some might say that's not a bad thing. All your relative advantage, you will be reduced to being harmonized like those EU states, and then the easy money and the easy days go. In a negotiation, you never take away your right to walk away. They need to keep you in the table as much as you need to keep them at the table, and everyone has a right to walk. The risk of being too rude, being too obvious, being too aggressive with what you offer is that you walk. These guys know Britain can't walk because traitor face, the little lizard over here, is locking them in and is working, taking his guidance from the Mandelson Rothschild backup team that he used to have when he was Prime Minister, and doing the running around like a good little junior leader for the cabal, whispering in ears and saying, stand on your line, stand on your line. We've nobbled them. They're not as strong as that. They can't go it. We're going to get the MPs to vote no deal. The only Brexit is a no deal Brexit. We predicted it. So let's get into the third part of this discussion. I want to talk a little bit about trading. Trading is a probability game. And recognizing the socio-economic politics of this Brexit is also a probability game. And when you understand the concept of who works for who and where the money flows, you can do a much better game of predicting outcomes. So let me say, and this is not a braggart thing, because this is something you could do too. This is something you could do too. It's a transferable skill. Understand who is the real power, not what the media tells you, not what Bloomberg tells you. Oh, they're going to investigate Nigel Farage. He announced too early that he'd won. He had information on the hedge fund. No, the pound fell. Carney printed loads of GBP, and those guys knew that was going to be what he did if we voted leave. That's why the pound fell. Guess what? You add more pounds to the mix, they lose value. It's called dilution. It's simple. It's inflationary practices. And the notion of tying pound collapse to you lot voted wrong is absolutely incidental. It is because of the central banker's action. So this whole Bloomberg expose, trying to make it about Farage, the central banker is the person responsible for the devaluation of the pound. And City boys were trading it short. How did they know? How did they know that if it was leave, old Mark Carney would show up and say, it's time to, the uncertainty makes me so nervous. It's such a terrible thing. It's going to be so bad. Time to print all of this currency because of the insider cartel. And you had individual hedge funds making 100 million, 160 million, etc., that had polling advice that was not available to the rest of the market. It is inside trading, and it's nothing really to do with Nigel Farage, even if he knew, unless you can prove to me he had a trading account. And I'm not backing up for Farage either. If he has a trading account and he was shorting the pound, throw him in jail if he had inside information. But start with your banker cabal and why Carney's action was so clearly known by those who were frauding. So when you understand who the crooks are, going back to my initial point, when you understand who the crooks are, you can make accurate guesses. We predicted Brexit when the media and everything was telling everyone, the populace, that you no need to even vote, Remain had it. They were trying to discourage the angry Brexiteer from showing up and expressing their view. They then pretended it was still going to be a fait accompli, while exit poll services already started to realize this was going to be a bigger thing. We're finding this out. I'm finding this out today. I guessed it because of Hudge, because of my own polling. These guys were talking about, internet polling where you only get the youth sitting online all the time. It was an absolute false and fake sample. The amount they were throwing in the fake narratives, the murderer that did Britain first, and all of this, I could see they were pulling out all the stops. They knew they were in a fight for their life and that it was going to go down, and I smelt their desperation. And that is one of the reasons a bookie that had 1:7 for Remain, and you could have got unbelievable odds for exit. Anyway, we guessed that, and it's because we see and we recognize how control structures operate. Trading is the same. Once, it's kind of like maths. I remember in maths, I used to do the first 2 just to warm up. You get 20 or 30 sums to do, 30, quadratic equations. You just have to recognize the process early. Do the first 2 to warm up and the last 3, which were the hardest. If I understand the concept, I warm up, I go look at the last 3. If I can do the hardest last 3, I don't need to ad nauseum repeat the other 27 examples. It's get the process and understand how it works. Once you understand how it works, you don't need it. I can do that math sum in the exam because I remember how I did it. I don't have to reinforce it. Hey, it's great to practice and you can try hammer it in. I'm not a rote learner. I want to know what are the levers and what makes things tick. And in this Brexit example, everything I envisioned would happen has happened. And I've gone on record before Brexit occurred that there will be a Brexit vote and that it will be subsequently hijacked, delayed, subterfuged repeatedly. And that's exactly what happened. The only true Brexit is a no-deal Brexit. What's the point of this? Not anything about me. It's about what you can do too. It's absolutely understandable once you understand how control structures work. And it's the same with trading. It's a process. If you follow key steps, you can increase the probabilities of being accurate. I still could have been wrong on any one of those. It could have been some really staunch maverick that was going against the system and decided to give the people what they wanted, and he was, an outlier. But generally, the control structure wins. Kennedy got rolled over. You don't push against the control structure for long, or you end up dead, or you get retired real quick and a stooge gets put in place. Just like Giannis got rolled out of the Greek government, just like anybody who really has morality and is not submitting to the cartel's key objectives and bringing them what they want get rolled out. Just like Thatcher turning very cynical about the EU, got her rolled out. All these elements are absolutely substantive, and that's how it works. So if you want to learn how to be better in the markets and to exploit opportunities, understand a method, a probability, and you'll be more successful. If you understand who is running your show, look at what the outcomes are and who is gaining. Not what the media tells you, and know who all the enemies are and who will be doing misdirects. Bloomberg, CNBC, ABC, Reuters, all of these clowns, all the mainstream media. Look at the narrative they're giving you, strip out all the emotion and read between the lines. What are they actually slipping in here? What is just the facts? Forget the interpretation and the opinion. What is actually the facts? This man is a lizard and a traitor to the British national people. He should be in The Hague for crimes against humanity. He is one of the biggest mass murderers indirectly ever in existence. He is absolutely an owned entity to his own interests of building his own wealth at the expense of the British people and serving a short cartel, from his Lord Levy advisor during his days to the oily Mandelson that was caught 3 times and reinstated almost as many times, who was linked to the Rothschild family. He is an absolute tentacle of a vile virus that needs eliminating. Tony Blair is a cancer, and Clegg and Major behind him are not much better. They are absolute turncoats. The only way Britain deals with this is you literally forget all the BNP references and forget everything else. You literally all vote UKIP. Lib Dems are sellouts. They tell you up front. They're the most honest about being sellouts. Labour is an absolute sellout. Labour is an absolute sellout, saying, oh, people's vote. Like the time 30 million people voted wasn't a people's vote. And the Tories are absolutely ripping themselves apart and are stuffed to the roof with the likes of Ken Clark, John Major, and all of these pigs with their snouts in the EU trough and getting bunged for the militarization of Europe that will come, all their shareholders in the likes of various dodgy companies. They are all wanting this agenda to go ahead, and they are not serving your interests. You need to no longer vote Conservative, Labour, or Lib Dem. You need to vote for the minority parties, preferably one that is single policy. And people say, shame on you, they're racist, they were Tommy Robertson or whatever. Vote for Nigel's one then. Whatever you like. What you need is a full scale abstention from the traditional parties. They have betrayed you, betrayed you, betrayed you. There is no other way of interpreting this. And the manner in which they conducted the negotiation was directed to make Britain look helpless and weak and to undermine its position. You never take away your option to walk away and do your own thing and not to be forced to deal with the only room in the only buyer in the room that you're being offered. There are many buyers of British goods outside of this. You could forge your own way. We've existed many years, including empire, before this beastly EU octopus came into being, which is actually quite recent. The trade bloc was one thing, the EEC. This has grown into a federalized superstate project. That was not what you were originally sold. Out. Take out these vile creatures. And the fact that they continue to get oxygen on BBC, Sky News, and all of this, and they put these lizards in front of us, tell you that these media are captive audience media are part of the problem as well. That's the end of my rant. Slightly more circumspect, but I mean, I was shocked and had to giggle my head off at the brazenness of the scam. And now I've just reverted to my usual anger mode. But that's where we're at. And what comes next, some of you might say, you're going to be tied to a deal. And the deal will be a washout of a deal. That's what's going to happen because no deal has been eliminated. A washout of a deal that will be sold to you, the final a little bit of credibility and a small minor concession here and there. And there you go. We've bent more than we ever could to try and give you a little bit of feel-good factor about what's been an absolute travesty conducted by people that don't and never intended and never wanted to give you the outcome you voted for, who must be decapitated and who flaunt their arrogance in front of you saying we know better than you. We asked you, but we don't really care what you said. That's it. With me, I'm timing out. And a similar level of understanding to other processes, methods can help you in all aspects of life. Understand where the trend is. Britain needs to unhitch from the sinking ship EU. I don't think she's going to get it in full. She's going to get some half in, half out, watered, lame deal that's going to be sold to you. You're going to get a lame duck sold to you as the peacock, the princess peacock. But at the end of the day, that's what's coming down, and that's my take. Speak to you all soon and later. And by the way, register for our free webinar where you can learn more about trading, politics, how the scamsters are going to run, how it's going to go down. I've got some incredible forward-looking scenarios of where we are in the reset sniper realm that I'm looking forward to share with you, and we can talk about those in good course over the future. Thanks for following. Like and subscribe and share if you value the content, and put this man out to pasture, please. This lizard. Thanks so much. Bye.